My name's Tyler Quinn, 34, and until this year, Christmas was my personal Super Bowl. Not because I cared about the gifts. God knows my family could wrap up a can of baked beans and call it thoughtful, but because it was the one day we collectively pretended we liked each other. For 24 hours, my dad stopped grumbling about how I never settled down, my mom stopped critiquing my hairline, and my sister Kayla stopped acting like her influencer brand deals were Nobel Prize worthy. Every December, I'd make the pilgrimage back to Cedar Falls, Ohio, the kind of town where everyone has a light-up reindeer on their lawn by Thanksgiving and half the population still believes, bless your heart, isn't an insult. We'd cram into my parents' sagging Colonial, eat way too much spiral ham, and suffer through the same off-key Christmas playlist that sounded like a dying cat. Someone, usually my cousin Mitch, would knock over the wine, my mom would sigh dramatically, and my dad would declare he was never hosting again. It was a disaster every time. And it was perfect. This year, I'd started early. I shipped gifts so thoughtful I was basically Santa with better taste. A state-of-the-art air fryer for mom, hers nearly exploded last Easter, a monogrammed whiskey decanter for dad, and the limited edition sneakers Kayla whined about for 6 months on her TikTok. I even ordered a crate of microbrews for my Uncle Jack, who liked to brag he had a refined palate, then washed down chili dogs with IPA. Money wasn't a problem. My job as a senior project manager paid well, and if we're honest, I'd been quietly covering half their bills for years. Every time Dad texted, "Can you float us till next payday?" I'd roll my eyes, mutter sure, why not, and Venmo them without making a fuss. Rent, car insurance, groceries, at this point, I was practically their silent benefactor. The patron saint of grown adults who never budget. So when December 20th rolled around and I got a message in our family group chat titled Important, I figured it was a reminder about who was bringing what. Instead, it read, "Mom. Hi kids. After a lot of thought, we're canceling Christmas this year. It's just too expensive. We're going to keep it quiet at home. Hope you understand. Love you all." I stared at my phone so long the screen went dark. Canceling Christmas? This was the same family that once threw a party when Kayla hit 5,000 followers on Instagram. The same people who insisted we do themed pajamas for the dog. And now, suddenly, we were too broke for one dinner? I typed, "Are you sure? I can help cover costs." Kayla replied within seconds with a thumbs-up emoji and changed the chat picture to a sad stock photo of a melting snowman. That was it. No call, no explanation. Just canceled. I didn't fight it. Maybe they needed a low-key holiday. Maybe Dad's HVAC business was worse off than he let on. So, like a rational adult, I decided to make the best of it. I bought myself a bottle of decent bourbon, heated up a lasagna on Christmas Eve, and tried to pretend I wasn't hurt. On Christmas Day, I slept in, FaceTimed a couple of friends, and watched Elf for the millionth time. I told myself at least I wouldn't have to endure my uncle's political rants or listen to Kayla detail the life-changing power of collagen powder. But no matter how hard I tried, something about it didn't sit right. The silence felt too rehearsed, too final. And around 8 p.m., that feeling proved right. My phone pinged with a notification. Kayla had gone live on Instagram. Maybe she was alone and feeling guilty. Maybe she wanted to vent. Against my better judgment, I clicked. And there it was, their living room, lit up like Times Square. A massive Christmas tree dripping with ornaments, garlands strung across every doorway, and a crowd of people laughing, dancing, clinking glasses. A DJ was literally set up next to the fireplace. Kayla shouted into the camera, her cheeks pink with champagne. "Merry Christmas from the real crew." I watched her pan the phone around. I saw my parents grinning, my aunts and uncles wearing tacky Santa hats, my cousin Mitch Midchuck. Someone popped a confetti cannon, and gold streamers rained down like they were celebrating a lottery win. I sat frozen, thumb hovering over the leave button. So that was it. Not too broke. Not too tired. Just too uninterested in including me. I don't know how long I stared at that screen. Long enough for my bourbon to go warm. Long enough for the lasagna to congeal into something resembling a doorstop. I didn't cry. I didn't rage post. I just sat there, letting it sink in. I'd been written out of the script. Silently, efficiently, like I was a character everyone decided to kill off between seasons. The next morning, December 26th, I woke up thinking maybe the bourbon had made it worse in my head. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe Kayla had decided to throw a tiny get-together that snowballed. Then I rolled over and saw the text waiting for me. No good morning. No hope you're okay. Just my dad, straight to the point. "Dad, Can you send $2,900 to cover January? Need it by tomorrow. No mention of the party. No apology for the lie. Just a casual, hey, can you bankroll our lives after we iced you out? I read that message twice, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly on brand. My family had always treated my support like a subscription service. I guess they figured if they skipped inviting me to Christmas, they'd still get the benefits of Premium Tyler. But something inside me finally snapped. I opened my banking app and scrolled through every linked account. The rent I'd been paying on Dad's temporary apartment, which somehow lasted 19 months. The car insurance for the SUV Kayla used to drive to her sponsored photo shoots. The family Spotify plan, because heaven forbid they endure a single ad between Taylor Swift songs. I just sat there, tallying up every bill, every quiet favor, every time I'd stepped in so they wouldn't have to. And for the first time, it felt less like kindness and more like a running joke I'd been too embarrassed to quit. I didn't rush. I made coffee, got dressed, and methodically shut everything down. First, the rent transfer gone. Second, the cell phone plan canceled. Third, the Spotify subscription. Your access has ended. That one felt extra satisfying. I called the electric company. The lady on the line sounded genuinely concerned when I explained. I'm so sorry, she said. That sounds awful. It's okay, I replied, and meant it. It's about time. By the time I was done, I'd revoked every automatic payment. Every invisible line that connected me to that house was severed. Then I texted back, lose my number. I'm not funding liars. And I blocked him. I'd expected to feel shaky, maybe a little guilt. Instead, I felt clean, like I'd finally showered off a film I hadn't noticed sticking to me all these years. The next 48 hours were a circus I watched from a distance. First, the call started. Unknown numbers, desperate voicemails, anonymous DMs from relatives who hadn't bothered to wish me a happy birthday in 6 years. Kayla, Ty, you're being dramatic. It was just a little party. Sure, a little party with a DJ and a confetti cannon. Mom, please call. This was all a misunderstanding. We can explain. I didn't respond. Then came the social media meltdown. Kayla posted a story of her in tears, claiming some people can't handle family boundaries and are financially abusive. It was almost impressive. She'd managed to spin abandoning me at Christmas into an act of self-care. And through all of it, the same phrase kept echoing in my head. Family comes first. I'd heard that 1,000 times, usually right before they asked for money. So I decided if family really came first, they'd survive without me. I'd almost convinced myself the worst was over. I'd blocked every number, cut every payment, and started imagining how peaceful life might be without daily guilt trips. Then, 2 days later, I got an email from my bank flagged urgent, suspicious login attempt. At first, I assumed it was spam. But when I called the number on the back of my debit card to be sure, the rep confirmed it. Looks like someone tried logging into your account 3 times from an iPad, she said. An iPad? I rubbed my forehead. I haven't used an iPad in years. Device ID matches one of your known logins, she added gently, like she was afraid to say what we both knew. I closed my eyes. I remembered it perfectly, leaving that old iPad plugged in on my parents' kitchen counter 2 Christmases ago when I'd stayed over. I'd never logged out. Of course I hadn't. Why would I? I hung up, heart thudding in my ears. Even after I'd cut them off, even after the meltdown, someone in that house tried to get back in. And that was it. The final straw. The next morning, I didn't call. I didn't text. I drove straight to Cedar Falls, that same sagging house still wrapped in drooping Christmas lights like a haunted holiday display. I parked across the street and stared at the windows, remembering all the times I'd pulled up with a car full of gifts, heart stupidly hopeful. Not this time. I walked up the porch steps and rang the bell. No answer. I knocked. Nothing. Eventually, the door cracked open. My dad stood there in a wrinkled t-shirt, hair sticking up in angry tufts. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Tyler, he croaked, as if he'd just realized I wasn't a dream. Where's the iPad? I asked. No hello. No how are you. Just straight to it. His eyebrows twitched. What? The iPad I left here. Where is it? He shifted, mouth opening and closing. We haven't touched it. Maybe Kayla. Save it, I cut in. My voice was quiet, but it made him flinch anyway. I know someone tried to hack my bank account from it. I'm taking it and leaving. He didn't argue. He just stepped back, and let me in. I hadn't been inside since last year, but nothing had changed. Same beige walls. Same weirdly floral air freshener. Except now it smelled like stale beer and desperation. Trash from the Christmas party still sat in bags by the kitchen door. Empty bottles lined the counter. The same people who claimed they couldn't afford a holiday had thrown a bash big enough to need a cleaning crew and hadn't even bothered to pick up. I spotted the iPad on the side table, screen face down, as if hiding in shame. As I reached for it, Kayla appeared on the stairs, eyes puffy. She looked wrecked in that performative, influencer way, like she'd been crying just enough to look tragic, but not enough to smear her mascara. "Tyler, please." Her voice wobbled. "Can we just talk?" I turned, gripping the iPad so tight my knuckles went white. "I gave you years," I said evenly. "Years of bailing you out. Years of forgiving everything. You can survive without 5 minutes of me listening to excuses." She flinched like I'd slapped her. I walked past her, out the door, and didn't look back. Once I was home, I reset every password I had, revoked every device login, and called my lawyer friend Jenna. Not because I planned to sue them, though God knows I could have, but because I wanted everything documented. No loopholes. No ways back in. That night, the silence in my apartment was deafening. Not sad. Not empty. Just honest. For the first time, I wasn't wondering how to fix things. I was finally wondering why I'd ever thought I should. After that day, I figured they'd finally get the message. But if there's one thing my family excelled at, besides guilting me, it was pretending reality didn't apply to them. 2 mornings later, I opened my email to find a new subject line in my inbox. Subject: urgent. Please, Tyler. It was from my mom. I almost deleted it unopened. But some masochistic impulse made me click. The email was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. "Tyler," it began, "I know you think we've done terrible things, but we're your family. Family makes mistakes. We didn't mean to hurt you. You've always been sensitive." Ah, there it was. The old "you're too emotional" card. A classic. She went on. "You're blowing things out of proportion. It was just one night. We were under a lot of pressure. Your dad's business has been struggling, and Kayla needed help with her car payment. We thought you'd understand. You always have. Please, can't we move past this? You're still our son. Family comes first." I read the last line twice, then laughed out loud. Family comes first. Sure. Family came first when they needed money. Family came first when they needed me to be the responsible one. But when it came to a basic courtesy like inviting me to Christmas, apparently that was negotiable. I closed the email without replying, but it kept gnawing at me. The fact they really, truly believed I'd eventually come crawling back, wallet in hand. That the only way to stay part of the family was to keep funding their dysfunction. So I decided if they were going to rewrite the story, I'd give them the ending they deserved. I pulled out my old laptop and opened the shared Google spreadsheet I'd kept for years, family expenses. It was my little ledger of all the favors I'd covered. I'd started it half as a joke, half because I didn't trust my memory to keep track of every last, just until payday. Line after line glared back at me. $1,200. Dad's overdue utility bills when he forgot to pay. $2,500. Kayla's lease deposit. $900. Mom's dental work. $400. Another emergency that was never really defined. $7,800. Dad's temporary apartment rent. It was all there. Every dollar, every month, every year. The total made my stomach drop. $36,950. $36,000. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like an idiot. 36 grand. And not a single thank you that wasn't immediately followed by, "Can you help with one more thing?" I spent the next hour drafting a letter. Not an apology. Not a plea. Just a record. To whom it may concern. This is not an apology or a request for reconciliation. This is a statement of fact. Over the last 7 years, I have contributed $36,950 to cover expenses for this family. This was done without resentment at first, under the assumption that it was mutual support. It was not. It became a pattern of dependence and entitlement. I am no longer willing to participate in that pattern. Enclosed, you will find an itemized receipt of every payment I have made on your behalf. I am not asking for reimbursement. Consider this a formal acknowledgement of the support you received. Effective immediately, I will not be contributing financially, emotionally, or logistically to this family. Any contact from this point forward must be based on accountability and mutual respect, or there will be no contact at all. Sincerely, Tyler. I attached the spreadsheet, printed 4 copies, and mailed them certified. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About finally naming what had always been unspoken. 2 days later, the calls started again. I ignored them all. But that Friday, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name scrawled in my dad's scratchy handwriting. I opened it on my kitchen counter, bracing for impact. Inside that envelope was a single sheet of paper. No formal greeting. No signature. Just one paragraph in my dad's blocky handwriting. Tyler, you've made your point. You want to humiliate us? Fine. Congratulations. Everyone knows now. Your aunts, your cousins, they're all gossiping about how you turned your back on your own parents. You always were self-righteous. You always thought you were better than us. I hope you're satisfied. I read it 3 times, waiting for the apology that never came. Then I folded it neatly, slid it into the same drawer where I'd put all the other evidence of who they really were, and closed it for good. It was funny. After all the years of them depending on me, they still thought they could guilt me into silence with one cheap shot. That I'd feel so ashamed I'd go crawling back, checkbook in hand, just to prove them wrong. I didn't. I spent that weekend cleaning out my apartment, literally and figuratively. I deleted old text chains, unfollowed Kayla's endless self-congratulatory posts, and unsubscribed from every family group email. By Sunday night, the only thing left was the voicemail. The one I hadn't listened to yet. It was from Dad. The day after he sent the letter, I sat on the couch, thumb hovering over the play button, thinking about how many times I'd replayed his voicemails over the years, searching for even 1 ounce of respect under all the obligation. I pressed play. His voice was tight, controlled. The way he sounded when he was furious but trying not to yell. "You think you're so special, Tyler," he began, and I could picture him standing by the kitchen counter, jaw clenched, eyes hard. "You think you're the only one who's ever had to sacrifice. You think you're better because you make more money. Well, you're not. You're just bitter. You always have been. And when this little phase ends, and it will end, you'll come back. You'll come crawling back because that's what you do." He paused, breathing hard. "You can pretend you don't need us, but you do. You always have. And you always will." Click. The voicemail ended. I stared at my phone, feeling nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just clarity. He was wrong. For the first time in my life, I didn't need them. And I didn't want them. I saved the voicemail anyway. Not because I thought I'd need proof, but because someday, if I ever doubted whether I'd made the right choice, I could play it again and remind myself exactly why I left. That night, I poured myself a drink. One of the fancy bourbons I'd bought for myself when I realized no one else was going to take care of me, and raised the glass in a silent toast. To freedom. To finally being done. To learning that family doesn't mean surrendering every boundary you have just to keep the peace. I turned my phone off and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept straight through the night. No dreams, no anxiety, no wondering if I'd overreacted. I woke up rested, clear-headed, and ready to start over. January slipped by quietly. No more calls. No more emails. Just silence, the kind that used to terrify me. Funny how peace feels unnatural when you've spent your whole life in chaos. Some nights I'd catch myself waiting for my phone to buzz with another emergency. Another apology that wasn't really an apology. Another guilt trip disguised as concern. It never came. Instead, I started building something new. I signed a lease on a bright, modern apartment 2 towns over. Bigger than I needed, but for once, I wanted space that felt mine. Not a hand-me-down from my parents. Not a place I rented because it was close enough to rush home every time they texted help. I set up a second bedroom as an art studio. I hadn't painted since college, but the first night I stood there in front of a blank canvas, I realized I hadn't stopped because I didn't have time. I'd stopped because I didn't have energy left after playing the good son. So I picked up a brush. I reconnected with old friends. I booked a trip to Montreal, just because I'd always wanted to see it in winter. I started therapy, where I finally said out loud what I'd been afraid to admit. That my family didn't just take my money. They took pieces of me I'd never given them permission to have. And I was done letting them keep it. About 3 weeks after I moved, I got a package. No return address, just my name in neat handwriting. I knew it was from Kayla before I even opened it. Inside was a framed photo of the Christmas party. Everyone in it looked ecstatic. Like a catalog for a family I'd never been part of. On the back was a note. "We still had a great time. K." It was supposed to sting. I could tell she thought it was a final blow. A little dig to remind me I was replaceable. But all I felt was relief. Because the truth was, that picture said more than she realized. It proved they still needed me to care. Still needed me to feel left out. Still needed me to play my part in their drama. And I didn't. I set the frame on my kitchen counter. Let it sit there for a week as a reminder. Then, one quiet Saturday morning, I picked it up and dropped it in the trash. No ceremony. No anger. Just a final acknowledgement that I was done. That afternoon, I wrote my last message to them. Subject: for closure. I don't need any of you to reply to this. In fact, I'd prefer you didn't. I wish you well. I hope you figure out your lives. But I won't be part of them anymore. This isn't about punishment. It's about peace. Mine. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just finished. Please don't contact me again. Tyler. I sent it. Blocked every number and email for good. And that was it. Freedom wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet Saturday, drinking coffee in a clean apartment where no one expected me to fix everything. Where no one was waiting to tell me I owed them something just because we shared a last name. I still get pangs of sadness sometimes. Grief for the family I wish I'd had. The parents who would have been proud without needing something in return. The sister who could have loved me without conditions. But those pangs pass quicker now. Because for the first time, I'm building a life that belongs to me. One that isn't measured by how much I can give or how much I'm willing to endure. One where peace isn't something I buy with my silence. I'm not the villain in their story anymore. I'm just not in it at all. And that's the happiest ending I could have ever imagined.